Tiauna Jackson is the CEO of the Jackson Agency, a small boutique firm that represents actors and writers in the film and TV space. She's a strong advocate of diversity and inclusion, and as great as Hollywood is with all the content it produces, it's been known to be a fear-based industry where people generally are very measured by what they share in terms of their experiences. Not Tiauna. She's very candid in sharing some of the challenges that she has in running a Black-owned and operated agency. And just minutes before our interview began, she shared some dampering news. Here's our conversation. So anything new other than the disappointing news with, the new mandate of sort of reducing staff, and I guess, but that sounds also like a maneuver to minimize on expenses.
Yeah, it's gonna change a lot of things for us, for the boutique. It doesn't hurt the bigger ones because they've got the established rosters, So I think it hurts us more than anything. I found out another Black-owned boutique went ahead and closed as soon as we went into quarantine. I found that out because a few of their clients came to my open call. So, there have been some more Black boutiques that we've, unfortunately lost due to finances. And I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I can stay open, but the more I look into things, I'm contemplating maybe trying to get hired again. I tried last year, it didn't work out. And so maybe with all of this, I'll try again and maybe see if I can go into one of the bigger agencies and do my work from there. So we'll see. Mm-hmm. That's it. I had open call. I'm exhausted from that. So
where are you at emotionally right now?
Frustrated. That's where I'm at. There's a level of frustration that is brewing even more so than it was now, because I really was hopeful that my writers would land somewhere, but it's going to be even harder than it was before the break. Because before the break, I kind of went to an event that we was focused on diversity. So I was able to make connections. Like I have a call coming up with Reese Witherspoon's production company because, I talked to them about this whole diversity thing. But, like we worried about is the longer we're under quarantine, the less likely that things were going to pop back up, right? Things are just going to pick up where they left off. That's not happening.
I thought it was really important to talk to you about Black representation in the industry, like the entertainment industry, because not only are you willing to be very open and frank about your perspective, but I think it's not in a mean-spirited way. It's more of in a very informative way to make people aware of the challenges Black people have in general in the professional world, but in a hyper-competitive industry like entertainment, being an agent is, me being sort of an outsider to the creative part, like even more challenging. So you have a what you call a boutique practice. Is you're a smaller outfit, and you represent whom? Actors, writers?
Yeah, actors, writers. I have one producer that I work with as well, and actually one up-and-coming director, but we tend not to take on too many in that arena. These guys have resumes, they've been working in entertainment, so it makes more sense to have them than someone completely green in that arena. But mainly our focus is on actors and writers.
And you mentioned last time you had a client who was on Westworld.
Yeah, he did. He just appeared in, I would say, probably 2 weeks ago's episode at this point now.
Okay. That's heavy duty in terms of being on a top show.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's always exciting when we book, these major shows, because we're that boutique that, shouldn't be here for all intents and purposes. We've had extreme uphill battles, racism, discrimination, all of those things. And so when we do, book these shows, especially a show on HBO, it's nice, but unfortunately it doesn't make it easier. You would think it would, but it doesn't.
And I asked you last time why you chose this career path. How did you get there?
It's funny because I think last week my answer was so upbeat and optimistic, and now I'm just like, because I'm crazy. Like, who who would do this to themselves? But ultimately, I did it because there honestly was no space for myself or my best friend. I was unable to find an agent for him. I was unable to find an agent. I was unable to find employment at an agency, even, in an entry level aspect. So after meeting other actors of color who were established and, for as far as I could tell, were talented, because I ended up casting them in my projects, I realized that I was going to have to figure this out and try to do it for us.
And you're just not somebody who just woke up one day and decided, oh, I want to have this seemingly glitzy job. You come with credentials. Like, you have education, you have experience. Share that with people who may listen.
Yeah, so I have a degree from Chapman University in communications, which is down in Orange, California. It's pretty well known in the film industry. And then I also have the UCLA professional program in producing under my belt, as well as the UCLA professional program in screenwriting.
You're rather well-rounded in a lot of disciplines that could, really contribute to having some level of success with, like, finance and the nuts and bolts on how productions are made and writing. Like,
I know how to be a line producer and break down scripts. I was an accountant. I'm also a registered tax preparer, so I'm a one-stop shop. I've also gone to set lighting school for a school that is one of the union schools that they accept new applications from. So I've definitely spent a lot of time really learning the craft as much as I could. And between my best friend and myself, we can actually make an entire film just by ourselves, just the two of us. We can light it, we can shoot it, we can edit it, I can cast it, we can budget it, we can do everything. So
what's been the path leading up to you opening your own agency?
The path initially was kind of similar to what you said, like, okay, I'm going to wake up and do this today. But the journey has been rough, because one of the things I wanted to do was leave behind the corporate mumbo jumbo and just be honest and straightforward and say, look, this is what I need. Here's how it works. If you do what I tell you to do, we can find success. But if you don't, then you cannot be surprised, that nothing is happening for you. And so there are, lots of bumps along the way where you bring in folks that, cause problems, and then you have to go and get rid of them. You run into issues to where, because you didn't work at another agency and you didn't have that contact list, you don't have, the contacts that you're supposed to have. And, one of those things they talk about is, having those relationships. And so because I was kept out of that world, even in a receptionist capacity, I didn't have any contacts. So I had to really work on getting those, and also getting my roster established and everything at the same time too. So you're dealing with it on both ends. You're dealing with it for talent being wary of a brand new agent, and then you have, casting being unaware of your agency, production being unaware of your agency. So you have a lot of work to do. And so the focus at first was in building a very strong roster, because, like they say, talent makes the agency. And so what they mean by that is, these bigger agencies don't have to do the work that I have to do, because they're bringing in what we would call A-list talent. So for instance, if Will Smith decided to come work with me, I wouldn't have any more of these problems, because the work follows him. They come for him. But because I don't have one of those yet, and that's what we're trying to get to, I have to go out and try to get opportunities, more so than I would if I were at one of the bigger agencies. I'm not saying they don't have to go out, but I'm saying that their phone rings a lot more than mine does.
If you have an A-list talent that has a lot of clout and a lot of power, how does that, outside of the opportunity, how does that lighten your load in terms of skepticism, potential prejudice, putting you through unnecessary or excessive red tape?
It's funny because in theory it sounds like it gets better, but it doesn't. It just becomes at a higher level. I mean, you've had Black A-listers who have their own production companies. You don't talk about some of their experiences, or even I remember Wanda Sykes in her stand-up once talked about how her agent pitched her a show where she's a millionaire who won the lottery, but she was a maid for a family, and that she loved working for that family so much that after winning the lottery, she decided to still stay there and be their maid. And in the set, she was like, I told them, set it up because I want to meet who came up with this dumbass idea so I can slap it right out their head. And so it goes to show that, like, it doesn't matter, if you're A-list or not, you're still going to have these issues where you have development executives that are just so out of touch that they just don't get it. But like they say, I'd rather be in that company than to continue spinning my wheels with folks who just, don't have the business acumen or even have the talent, unfortunately, to get to that level. And so that's kind of where it's coming from of, if I had more established people willing to work with me, we would be able to impact more change.
Is some of the talent skeptical of hiring you for particular reasons?
They were at first. In year one, yes, absolutely. I literally had to list my education on my website just to, I guess, give these folks peace of mind. And these were the mainly white folks. So I even went through a point where at one point I was in law school. And so I was like, I would eventually be a JD candidate. And so I had this blurb on my website, like, here's me, here's everything you need to know about me, here's all my education, this is what makes me qualified, but most of your agents don't even have any of this. So, I don't really know why you guys are scrutinizing my qualifications, but, here they are. And it's here because there are some of you who think that, I have to be some sort of Yale graduate in order to be an agent. And that seemed to work, but it's sad that I even had to say that.
Especially, it's like, why is the standard different for Black people? Like I wonder sometimes, and the answer is probably forever. It's that the question I always beg is, why do Black people always have to prove above and beyond that we are capable or as capable as our white counterparts? People are in love with Trump. Compare his credentials with Obama. It's like he's not even, in my opinion, a good businessman. And then you have Obama, this Ivy League lawyer, so well versed in all the areas that matter, like foreign affairs, economic policy, you name it. So just like bringing the conversation back to you, you are military. You're a veteran. You were in the Army. You have an accounting background. You went to film school. I feel like you attach those credentials to somebody who's white, and they really shine. So, am I saying something that's not true?
When I started, there's literally a dude who runs his commercial agency out of his apartment that he manages. Okay. And you meet in the leasing office. So I just felt like if you're willing to work with him and he's in his pajamas eating a bowl of cereal at your meeting, I don't see why you would be adverse to meeting with me at my office.
So one of the interesting things, kind of just staying on that subject, you were a part of a New York Times article, and it's framed as this roundtable with Black managers and agents, and you guys are talking a bit about some of the struggles, maybe some anecdotes with different kinds of adversity like prejudice.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the challenges that a lot of you guys experience that people may not be privy to. And one of the quotes that you had is that you, I guess at some point were told, quote, I'm told I'm not the right fit. And we kind of know what that's code for. So I asked you last time, getting that type of rejection, given your credentials, how do you feel about that?
The same as before. It's frustrating. It hurts. It's, all of these things because at the end of the day, these folks are denying me the ability to survive in this world, basically. If I was qualified enough for you to call me in for an interview, why is it now that all of a sudden, I'm not the right fit? And, for me, the baseline of, checking like how diverse a company is I come in and I look who's there. I look at the people who are passing me in the lobby. I look at the reception team. Am I seeing a person of color or am I seeing anyone who looks like me? And when I'm not seeing that, I'm not surprised. It happened when I went out on some interviews last year. So, and the fact you just look at the numbers, you look at the numbers of folks who are employed at even if these bigger corporate agencies, and it seems to be like 12 to 15 over the thousands of employees that they have. So it's not even me not being the right fit. It's just clearly obvious that they're just not interested in having a diverse workplace.
You think the core reasons are?
I've talked to some folks. I've talked to, my immediate circle of friends, and I've just spoken to people randomly. I had once was at a memorial for a manager who had passed, and a casting director was there, and we were talking. And she was head of casting at CBS, like back when there were just 4 networks. And we were talking about, I told her about my experiences and my level of tenacity and this, that, and the other. And I happened to be there with a client. So she was just co-signing on everything. Like, yeah, she's so great. She does this and blah, 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 blah. And so I had asked the woman for advice, and she had told me a story about how she had hired an assistant who swore that they didn't have ambitions to like try to take her job, or make her look bad, whatever it was. But as first chance that woman got, she tried to come for that, the head of the department's job. And so she kind of learned like, yeah, you might want to have somebody who's not as astute because you do have this cutthroat nature in entertainment. Maybe that's it. I don't know. It's a scenario where I've interviewed with the owners of some of these agencies, and I've just interviewed with whoever the department head is at those agencies. Obviously, the resume is impressive enough to get me in the door, answering their questions, sharing my knowledge of some of the sites. But from what my best friend has kind of told me, it's just me, it's just my presence, it's just who I am. So we talked about, the whole being well-spoken, right? Before as to how that is a hindrance for us. And I guess, that's where it comes from. I could be myopic and just be like, well, it's you, something's just wrong with you. It could be your attitude, it could be this, that, and the other, but I've been employed before. So, if I'd never had a job ever in my life, I'd probably be like, Tiauna, you need to make a change. But I've worked for ridiculously wealthy white families. So clearly I'm employable, but I think in this day and age, there are some folks that are just mediocre. And when they are threatened or, in their words, intimidated by my presence, right, they're going to prevent me from, being within their space, basically.
What do you think's so intimidating about you?
5'9", right? 5'9" with shoes on, former basketball player, pretty big girl, got my little biceps. I don't know. I honestly don't know, because I went through this before when new clients would come in and the Caucasians would say I was intimidating, and I was literally just sitting down watching them perform their monologue. And the people of color would come in and say they were nervous. So I think it's the same thing as dog whistle politics and buzzwords, right? Whenever you feel uncomfortable by someone's maybe perceived education or whatever it is they have, because I've literally gone into spaces and just walked in the room and just stood there, or went up to someone, said hello and my name, and they always have these nonverbal expressions that are just like bewilderment and amazement, or in some instances, they look me up and down. I remember taking one of the trade classes that I took for the set lighting, and I literally just kind of stood there and said my name, and one of the guys was like, "Oh, you're hot shit, right? You're hot shit." And I just kind of looked at him and was like, what? So it just doesn't matter, that doesn't matter what I do. Breathing apparently causes this problem.
Maybe it's some interesting duality, if that's the right way to phrase it. And what I mean by that, excuse me, is is whatever, I'm trying to get my words right. So if an employer is looking for somebody highly educated and qualified, if you present a Black person who is that, then some kind of way the conversation pivots to an alternate narrative. Like, oh, well, he or she's just not the right fit. Or if a Black person is a candidate for a job and they don't meet some standards, it then pivots to some other narrative to justify why they can't or won't have that person in that agency or in that company. Fair or not?
I'm so over it at this point. It's like, how you get older, you get a certain point, and then at this point I've been working for myself for so long that it makes it hard to even imagine going back into that environment, because you have to understand, when I left that environment, I left after getting a settlement check for being harassed for having natural hair. So I've been on my own for a minute now. And so then when I go and reintroduce myself into these environments, or I'm setting an event with other Black agents who work in those environments, and they say, well, you have to code switch because it's more professional, one has to really ask themselves, do you want to be in that type of environment? But your assessment is accurate. These guys, they know their strength in their numbers. That's why they gang up on you when you're by yourself.
I still get told, man, you're very articulate and well-spoken. Still.
You are. For a Black guy, right? How dare you have an understanding of the English language?
Yeah, and it's like, what did you expect? Like, I know in one respect, the world tells white people, and this is not a slant, I think it's just my observation and just my experience, the world overwhelmingly tells white people that they are the conquerors, they are the leaders, they are the cream of the crop, and some people of color are not at your level. And so when we mix with some of these people, then there's like wait a minute, there's like uh-oh moment, like, what is this? Like, what I've been told all of these years is not manifesting itself in truth right now, because this man or woman is clearly bright. This man or woman is clearly sharp. Fuck. And I think from there, and this is just my guess, this is nothing I can really prove, it just leads to, okay, well, this person's not the right fit. Or they're good, they have impressive credentials. I've gotten that. You have impressive credentials, but we're going to continue with other candidates. And to that, I say, well, that's horseshit, because I've demonstrated in some of the biggest companies in the world that I can function at a high level. So what are you talking about? That's one of my spills. You, Lady T, you mentored a couple of white agents, or I guess
they were interns who came in for my internship, and one of them works at ICM now, and the other works at Studio 71, which does the YouTube multi-channel network stuff. So one, I believe, is an assistant to an agent in some space. I don't know I forget if it was digital or whatever. I'd have to look on LinkedIn. And the other is an actual talent manager now over there at Studio 71. So that's why I said, if there was any question as to whether or not I knew what I was doing, their success would be that proof.
You shared a story with, I guess, an actor who has both a Black management team and a white management team.
Mm-hmm.
What's that all about?
So what I caution the youth about when I speak at various engagements, especially, young Black women who are out here trying to figure out, how they can get involved, is to understand that there will be people that will not associate with you because you are Black. And, it's the same thing that we're both talking about, of we're highly qualified, have the experience that's necessary to do some of these jobs. And on my side, agenting is not rocket science, you know what I'm saying? So it's not a difficult thing to do. But understanding that there are Black actors out there who are on Instagram and, oh, Black girl magic. Oh, Black this, Black that. Oh, I'm so excited to be out here doing my thing as a Black person. I just can't believe it. But then their agents are white, their managers are white, their publicist is white, you know what I'm saying? Their attorney is white. Like none of their team that is, you know, responsible for their day-to-day operations are of color. And so what I caution people about is, you know, to be careful of just, and I say this, just because someone is pro-Black on social media doesn't mean they're actually pro-Black. And so, yes, there is a particular celebrity that I do know of firsthand who has, I won't say firsthand because I've never met him, but anyway, I know it to be true, basically, for various reasons, that they have two different publicity teams. One is all Black that they take to the Black events, and one is all white for all of the other events. So no matter what, when this celebrity shows up at, you know, BET, and when we had the Source Awards, and I would say probably the Image Awards, when that particular actor shows up, all everyone knows is of their Black team. And so obviously that's going to make it be a certain type of appearance of, oh, well, things are this way and this person must be pro-Black because look at their Black team, look at all this melanin just dripping on this red carpet. But the truth of the matter is that their A team is their white team.
I wonder if there's ever any conversations where, like using the example you have, where the Black management team says to the agent or says to the actor, hey, I'm just curious, why are you just inviting me to all of these Afrocentric events? Like, why can't I represent you? Like, if I'm representing you well enough to go to these Black events, why can't I go to these other events?
They would be fired if they dared ask that question. Come on now. You know that. Listen, I got myself in trouble when I went up to one of the actresses and said, yo, now that you've made it, how come you haven't switched to Black reps? And she swerved me right on over to her white publicity team. And now I don't watch her show anymore. So they don't care. That's what I've learned. They really don't care. And I mean, and this is the same thing that goes for the Black media outlets as well. They don't care. You would think that someone who has achieved all of the things that I have achieved on my own, that I would be more well-known, right? I'm in the New York Times. Wrong. You won't find me on any of the Black blogs or digital magazines. It's not for a lack of effort on our part. You know, my publicity team, it's not that. It's just that they don't care. You would think that, you know, a Black-centric magazine, entertainment blog, whatever it is, would be focused on maybe from time to time, you know, doing a spotlight on a fresh new artist, a young new artist, right? In my case, oh, who's this young new agent who's making waves in Hollywood? No, they don't care. They would rather report about insert some A-lister's name of, oh, well, here's their tips for staying at home during the coronavirus, or, oh, Cardi B's live streaming again, talking about the president. They would rather do that than actually, you know, inform the masses that, hey, there's someone here who's saying if we work together, we can actually impact change. Because at the end of the day, talent makes the agency. And I've said that before. If I was able to get Cardi B and Beyonce and Regina King and Jamie Foxx and Octavia Spencer, and hell, even Monique, if I was able to get them to come work with me, oh, there'd be hell to pay. Like, there would be so many changes that actually would happen because I would make them happen. Because everybody talks about diversity and inclusion, but it's not true. It's really not. Just because you're seeing more movies like, you know, that might have some Black African leads or on occasion Black American leads, that's it. If you're seeing 6 more movies a year out of the 200 something that are shot, that's not diversity and inclusion.
That reminds me of a Malcolm X quote. You want to hear it?
Yes.
Malcolm X said, if you stick a 6-inch knife in my back and take it out 3 inches, you're not doing me a favor.
That is exactly diversity and inclusion. They're like, well, we gave you 2 more movies than we normally do. I'm looking at a complete, total entertainment overhaul. I want to see more people of color when I walk into these offices. I want to see more people of color when I walk on set. I had a client who worked on a set. She was the only Black woman on the crew. That doesn't make any sense. The show is a Black lead show.
Tiauna, I think we got to go beyond, and this is not directed towards you, I think white people have to understand why it's important for diversity and inclusion. It's important because a white person knows how to be a white person. They know the white experience. So what that means to me is you have social blind spots. You lack some perspective. You lack some information that can help a corporation grow, that can add more value to a production, add more value to a story. That's why you have more diversity and inclusion. I could never effectively advocate for women or the LGBT community without having some of those people at the table and advising me on things I have no idea on how to more effectively make decisions on when you're developing policy or when you're developing, when you're serving financial needs, so on and so forth. Like, would you say that's a fair, fair reasoning for that?
Yes, but you already know you're dealing with programming that existed where the white man wrote all the black historical movies. I still get pictures from folks right now. I've got this movie. It's a historical thing about, this coach in Tennessee and this, that, and the other. But then it's not a black person telling that story. It's no different than like how Harriet got all messed up, you know? This is programming. And you've gotten to a point where these men have gotten used to dictating how the black experience is told. It's the same conversation that we started to have when Cardi B burst on the scene of like, okay, do we want our children to be like this? You know what I'm saying? So then it started to create those problems and creating that disruption too, and that divide. You have shows that, depict gang violence, drug violence, or whatever that typically tend to be, black helm shows. And then you have folks who think that that is how all black people are. And it may be true, depending on where you live. For some people, it is what it is. Like I had a conversation with a friend from college, and I guess he's my ex-friend now. And I was laughing at just Dr. Umar Johnson, and his latest musings. And I was just like, y'all really cannot be believing any of this stuff. And he said, no, this stuff is true. And I'm like, no, this doesn't make any sense. Like, no, but who is living like this? Like, I don't live like this. I don't know anyone who lives like this. I've never known anybody who lives in that manner. And he was like, well, I see it every day in Chicago. Okay, well, then I guess Umar's for Chicago, because Umar's not for me. He's not for me in LA. He's not for me in Phoenix. He's not for me in whatever city that I decide to live in. But, I guess that's where you have the people who, speak their truth and talk about their experiences. But I mean, if that's really what it's like living in Chicago, someone needs to fix that shit, because that's insane. Who the fuck would want to live like that?
People, they live in really tiny worlds, and they don't want to believe that there's an outside, like there's a bigger existence than the one that their little brains are confined to. Yes, I said little brains, and I don't care whoever get mad at it.
There's some folks who are at the hair salon right now. That's getting their nails and hair done because the quarantine's been lifted. So yeah.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
Mm-hmm. I know.
I marvel at it.
I literally commented on my former teammate, because she's a massage therapist. And she was like, such and such spa is now open for retail. Make sure you get your gift cards for Mother's Day. And all I could say was, wow, like you too?
I don't understand the dissonance. So you've been on the creative side in entertainment. I've largely been on the corporate side, and I have a lot of the same observations as you do. I've experienced something, and I'm wondering to what level you've experienced it. Like, do you, in your dealings with being an agent and working with above the line talent and whatnot, has anybody white acknowledged what you're going through? Like either A, I know you're qualified, I don't understand why these agencies haven't picked you up, and B, yes, I know about the racism in this sector, and, I want to validate what you're going through. Do you experience any of that?
I do, but it's actually from my clients. Like one of my clients, he is about that life. One of my white clients, he will say publicly, he's like, I know that there's privilege and I've been able to do this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. And like, what's happening to you isn't cool. You know what I'm saying? Like I do, some of my clients who are white are just like, yeah, no, this is some bullshit. And so that's why they continue to work with me so we can try to impact that change. Yeah. Have I ever had like an executive say that? Not directly. I mean, not anything like publicly. They'll just be like, wow, I really commend what you're doing. That's about it. They respect it and they understand it, but are they getting ready to cape for me? No.
That's the caveat. And it's like, I get that from some of, and I try not to be too judgmental. It's like I have a Jewish friend, one who's unapologetically sympathetic. Another one more of I would say, a decision maker, a position of influence and decision making. And he said, how do you guys not snap and go crazy? I said, good question. I said, because some of us do. I don't know how I said, I don't know, maybe I'm just a little more seasoned, a little more disciplined in my thinking. Like I don't let people dictate how I feel about myself. I don't know. Yes, that's so interesting. But it's not surprising with you because I think people on the creative side tend to be more fearful of being blackballed in case word gets out that maybe they're oversympathetic with somebody, like you who intimidates people.
And so part of it is upbringing. My dad was the first Black superintendent at a major manufacturing plant that manufactures like every piece of aluminum can that a soda goes into. So, he was used to dealing with that. And I'll be honest, when I was a little girl, my dad got attacked by one of the white boys of the job who lost his damn mind and tried to stab my dad on the loading dock. And my dad drop kicked him and shattered his elbow and has screws in his elbow to this day. So a lot of times in my dealings with them, I learned from my father's experiences and then just talking to him, because we even have these conversations now with, Trump supporters and drinking the bleach and all that stuff, and you do just kind of learn how to deal with them, to be honest. You really do. You're in a world where, you're around them. They're not going to go anywhere. And so you kind of learn how to adapt and finesse. And that's why you have some people who, they dress a certain way, they talk a certain way, they choose certain jobs, they affiliate with certain people, or in some instances, the easy way to get in without scrutiny is to have a white significant other. And so when you start to look at a lot of these Blacks who are successful, whether they're agents, attorneys, publicists, actors, whatever, directors, if you'll notice, a lot of them are aligned with spouses who are Caucasian. So in some ways you can see it as, adapting to survive. In other ways, it can be seen as the death of the Black race as we know it. It just all depends on how you look at it. I guess it's a glass half full, glass half empty kind of perspective, but it's something that I've definitely noticed. I've dated outside of my race, so I've noticed it too. But I think for me, what is changing my perception constantly was the fact, like, when we started, I had just read that email and had just relayed to an intern of like, crap, we're not going to be able to get my writers out the way we want to. But then this white executive had this like, I think it's a template that he wrote out and pasted, but it was like this whole like Black power, blah, 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 blah. But the picture on my Gmail was white. It was that kind of thing where it was just like, yeah, we're committed to people who have been disenfranchised and blah, 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 right? But he's saying it in a production way of like, oh, well, people who are 5th and 6th on the call sheet, right? And so then I'm like, but this is a white guy. Like, what is this? And that happens a lot with these guys. Oh, yeah, we really want to create that space for people of color and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, if you really wanted to create that space, how come I'm not having this conversation with a person of color right now? But I digress. So I watched Kenya Barris's Black AF. Have you watched it yet by any chance?
No, but one of my relatives say, hey, I think the male character or the father character, whatever, is you if you had kids. I'm like, okay, gosh. I wouldn't know.
Wow. I don't know your parents' style.
Should I be pissed off at this person?
Well, and that's why I'm saying, wow.
Okay.
I don't know your parenting style. I don't know your ability to commit to your partner and be present. But what I can say is that Kenya was not really other than money. So maybe. But what was interesting about that show were actually a lot of the parallels between what has aired on Blackish with certain situations. There were some things there that are like, okay, he really is writing his life. But there was this episode that I think is going to go down in infamy where he has this like Zoom meeting with Will Packer and Tim Story and Lena Waithe and Issa Rae. And they're talking, I'm trying to think if I missed anyone, and they're talking about some movie that he wrote, I guess, that they directed that was just awful and he hated it, but everybody loved it. And so they went to go talk. Ava was there. Okay. So they went to go talk about that. And then everybody else kind of dipped on them because they were just like, yeah, but we made our money, you know? So then Lena's like, I got you. I'll come to the screening with you. Like, we're about to go ahead and just, set it off. And we get there and Kenya then is honest of like, yeah, I can't believe you guys like this. Like, I didn't like it. And Lena completely backtracks and was just like, oh, different stories, need to be told. And who are we to say that, someone's art is bad and blah, blah, blah. So then everybody just loved Lena and Lena just left Kenya there to just like burn. Right. And so Lena tells him like, oh, Kenya, we'll talk about this later, backstage. And Kenya was like, no, we have nothing to talk about. And then it made me think about like who they really are. When you look at certain things and you see, like, we've had these conversations about, okay, is Lena's art good? What were the problems with this Harriet movie? What were the problems with the CJ Walker movie, that they did? And at the end of the day, these guys basically won the lottery. They're able to produce content and get it out there, where there are other folks that may have better content that can't get it out there because they don't know somebody who's in a position to make it happen. And I think we've gotten to that point where we're seeing now that it really, like they say, it's who you know, not what you know. Your work doesn't have to be exemplary anymore. Just like we're looking at Quibi now and how is Quibi doing? I haven't watched anything on Quibi, but I have a distributor who watched it and she was like, yeah, the content isn't that great and it's suffering. People didn't flock to Quibi the way they thought it was going to.
You're talking about the streaming platform and who just bought it? Was it Warner?
I don't know. I don't know if someone just bought it, but I know that they took a portion of CAA and let them run it. I know that much. So, what's her face? James. Yeah, Reese's husband should be running that, James Toth or whatever. So after going on that tangent, what I mean to say is that there are Black folks who understand that they may not be the best, but they're in a situation where their content is out there, the money's coming in, and they finally made it. And these are people who struggled just like anybody else would struggle, in a studio apartment just trying to make it. I mean, if you watch Lena Waithe's 20s, the pilot has the main character literally being evicted from her apartment. All of her stuff is outside and all she wants to do is just go watch a movie. So you're dealing with folks that were on a struggle that now have lots and lots of money coming in and they've made it. And, they have little programs where they give back and do different things, different filmmaker showcases, but for all intents and purposes, they're not really here to disrupt the status quo and really impact change. Because frankly, if they were, they wouldn't be greenlit. There's a reason why we don't see much from Melvin Van Peebles anymore.
Oh, fuck.
So,
I haven't heard his name in a long time.
Yeah, I bumped into him at a Cory Booker presidential fundraiser. I was trying to talk to him, but he kind of gave me the cold shoulder, sad face. So,
well, it's your own fault for being so intimidating and well-spoken.
He was slightly taller than me. I was surprised because most of the actors are shorter than me, or my height. So he was a little bit bigger than me. So
I know we're doing this at a time where you got some disappointing news, and I can't say it enough, and I like that you are there for whomever, younger person or person in whatever age group, needs to see that mentally tough people push forward. I think you're still driven by this. What do you think you need to do on top of what you've already done to maintain a competitive edge in continuing and acquiring clients and not only just acquiring clients, but serving them well and giving them the best representation possible?
It's funny because I think I ended up thinking about some of this stuff over the weekend because I'm figuring out, how we're going to move in this post-corona era since things are going to be very, very tight. Um, and one of the places that I'm at is we have to have quality talent. I've developed so many people, I cannot develop everyone. And I think it's my fault because the interviews that I do and I talk about how I started and what I'm all about, and then I get folks who, have no acting training, they haven't done anything, and then they run and be like, "Well, I want you to be my agent," and I'm like, "But you haven't gone to school." You don't have a resume. I just literally had one of the most frustrating meetings of my life where this woman put a bunch of guest star credits on her resume. And for those who don't understand, a guest star is that like star of the episode. The story centers around them, right? And she was on Insecure twice. She put that she was on I'm Dying Up Here, and she put some other like major show on there. And when I couldn't find footage, couldn't find any evidence of her, was unfamiliar with her name. And I said, I think these are background. Like, are these background? And she said that she had clips. She sends me the clip and she says, well, I'm the one in the green. And I watch the clip and the camera starts to truck left across the crowd because this is that episode of Insecure where they went to the little movie, you picnic to watch the movie like at Hollywood Forever Cemetery or whatever. And sure as shit, there she was on a blanket being background. She wasn't a guest star, you know what I'm saying, in this show. And so this is where the honest conversation has to be is here's exactly what I need you guys to come to me with. You need to come with improv from UCB, Groundlings, or Second City. You need to come to me with Meisner from either Baron Brown or, dare I say, Leslie Kahn, which is a whole conversation because she was the one who got busted for telling a Jewish woman who had olive tone skin to pretend to be Mexican and put ruby red lipstick on and say that her name was Rosie Ramirez and then go see if she could register that name with SAG so she could get an agent. Yeah, that was Leslie Kahn. So a lot of times she's off my list, but a lot of people have gone there. I've never met her. I'm actually happy I've never met her because I just feel like my reflexes would land me in jail. But I need training from places that actually hold weight and value. We cannot continue to waste our time at places that really just aren't setting you up for success. And I've had this conversation with the kids when they come out of these colleges too. They come to these meetings and they ask these questions that let me know they have no idea what they're doing. And all they're doing really is just painting themselves as an easy mark. When you start asking, these crazy questions, like at this point, I've been around for 6 years and people may disagree, but I don't feel like I need to be asked the question now of like, why did you start your agency? When I've talked about it at least in 10 different articles. And I've given them a list of the articles prior to the meeting and said, here, read these and do your research. Most of your questions have been answered here. And then the others of like, well, what do you like about being an agent? And I'm just kind of like, I hate it. It's awful. Don't do it. But I just don't like that has nothing to do with my existence here as an agent. I've been around for over 5 years at this point. We have work to do. And so for me personally, answering those questions are very rudimentary. I would rather you ask me like, what can I do to go out more? What can I do to get bookings? How can I help my career progress? Rather than trying to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. If you're questioning why I'm doing what I'm doing, why are we having this meeting? You came here and you said you needed an agent. It's like, to me, it's like going in to get an oil change at a mechanic shop. And before they start checking the oil and the filter and changing everything, you're just like, hey man, what do you like about being a mechanic? Why'd you decide to be a mechanic? It's like, do we really interview the mechanic for their qualifications before we bring in the car? No, we're like, hey man, the engine's knocking. And they're either going to tell you, oh, we don't do that here. Or, okay, we looked at it, it's your transmission. You're going to need to go this place because they specialize in transmissions, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. And that's the way I look at certain things. But really, I just need folks that are established. A lot of agencies don't take people who have less than 3 co-star credits. And co-star credits are typically those people who just, say, okay, have a seat in the lobby, or he went that way, or here's your water, that kind of thing. They're just minor little roles, but they're very hard to get. And it's unrealistic to think that your agent can get that for you. And there's a reason why a lot of these agents are not as hands-on as I am, because one, it's very time consuming. But two, we're commissioned. Nobody has time for this. Nobody has time to sit up here and fight with you all day for a commission that ranges between $12.50 to $100. And that's what people don't understand. Like I watch people online complain about a $20 commission. Meanwhile, your agent has to eat, your agent has to, have an office, your agent has to be able to subscribe to the casting sites because they're not free. Like the agent has to spend a lot of money in order to conduct business. And they've done all of this work for you for free, literally. And now you've booked something and you're upset that your agent might be getting an extra $20. Like, are we really, is that where we're at now? And so that's the life of the boutique agent. And so now I'm at that point where the threshold's just been cut off to where I can't keep messing with folks who aren't going anywhere, and it's terrible to say, but that's kind of where we're at. And I can assess that in meeting with you in 10 minutes because that's how many people I've met. And so I know the telltale signs. But most importantly, I trust my gut. If we're talking and I'm not feeling you, I already know it's not going to work.
What's been keeping you in the game this long?
One, I would say, is my clients. They actually surprise me. There are times where I feel like they don't care, and then they surprise me and they care. Two is just trying to stay in there because, the theory is, well, it's not supposed to be easy. You shouldn't quit, yada, yada, yada. But then there have been times where I literally was like, all right, I think we're about to throw in the towel and be done. And then some former A-lister will reach out and be like, hey, I want you to rep me. That kind of thing will happen from time to time. So that kind of keeps me going. But also what's weird is when I go to networking events, all these people know who I am. And I have no idea who they are. Yeah. Cause I'll post things like we have a group that's designed for people of color and everything. And I'll post just nonsense that's happening. Like, for instance, I had posted in a group that apparently was predominantly white and said, hey, I have this WGA franchise. I'm looking for scripts. And these two white men came and heckled me and were like, oh, you're a WGA franchise? And I was like, yeah. They're like, oh, the WGA doesn't franchise. And then I literally pasted the link where the WGA lists all of the franchises. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about.
You're talking about the Writers Guild.
Yeah. So I just go through a lot of bullshit and I like talking about it online because it's how I de-stress. It's how I don't carry that stuff with me per se. And honestly, I wish I had an answer as to why I keep going. I just keep going because there's really nothing in my way right now that is stopping me from going. I hit a lot of walls last year. And then in February, the New York Times article dropped. And so I was literally on a Nancy Drew kind of thing where I was just going to do this, I don't know, personal essay, if you will, of here's all of the racism, here's all of the discrimination that I'm experiencing. Here are the audio files. Here are the emails. I'm not making this shit up. Here you go. And just drop the mic and keep it moving. That was where I was at with it.
You were going to do an Eric Snowden?
So... hopefully maybe tomorrow I'll be like, I have an answer now, but I don't have an answer. I have no idea. At this point, it's just God and ancestors. That's about it.
I saw an article and I didn't read it. I just sort of read the headline and the byline. And so I don't know how immersed you are with football. They just had the NFL draft for all of the, outgoing college players into the NFL. And one of the interest, I guess what was interesting about it is somebody made the note that a lot of the now or soon to be professional Black athletes have Black agents. Did you hear anything about that?
I did because I'm a member of diverse representation. So shout out to Nicole Lynn. I want to go work for Nicole.
I brought that up. Are you considering, maybe expanding your practice, pivoting, sports, esports? What do you feel about that?
It's funny you mentioned that because when I had moved into my office in Century City, somehow, some kind of way, someone on my floor was registered as an NFL agent. And I don't even remember how I found that. And I was like, wait, you have to be registered? And so I started looking into it. And it's yeah, you got to go to this school for X amount of hours, then take a test and presto changeo, you're an NFL agent. And I was like, huh. But I think, it's the same thing of okay. And I think I probably looked at it even more bluntly than I did as an actor, where it's how do I convince these young men to work with a Black woman? I mean, yes, they have mamas, and this, that, and the other, but I think in that space, I felt like it was going to be an even more uphill battle as a Black woman. Not so much as a former athlete, because one of my biggest pet peeves has been watching these young men just pilfer away, you know, money that could sustain them for the rest of their lives if they do it right. Um, and so even now with my actors, I preach about that. Like, I've been warning these guys since August that something like this was going to happen with, I didn't know it was going to be a virus, but I said, the bubble's going to pop and we're going to have this recession and you guys need to start saving money now. So effective immediately, no more acting classes. Like, these kids are spending $400 a month on acting classes. You know, you add that up over the course of a year, you're spending about $5,000 a year on acting classes. So I would love to, is the short answer, because I'll just be so long-winded. I would love to, but I think I'm at this point now where we're still trying to get our sea legs with literary. And I'm already in 4 other markets. I'm in LA, I'm in the Southwest, the Southeast, and New York, dealing with those markets. I have over 170 clients. I would love to do sports, but I feel like I would have to probably close some of the other departments to be able to spend the time on it that I would want to spend the time on it, because that's a whole different animal. See, with acting, I can go on a casting site and submit their faces and keep it moving. With this, it's like I have to build relationships with all those GMs at those different places. And even like what they did with, you know, LeBron's, I think it was LeBron's agent. They came and made that rule that you now have to have worked at an agency for X amount of years before you can be an agent. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, well, I doubt they're going to hire me at a sports agency too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I'm going to have the same problems I'm having now at a talent agency.
I didn't realize you were working in different regions in the country. Like, are there pluses and minuses to dealing with people in different regions?
Yeah, because a lot of the other markets are anti-LA. And so they don't understand that I'm not like the rest of these jackoffs in LA. Like, I'm a regular person. No, like, for real, because they really do hate LA. Like, they'll just be like, because I had one casting director. They do, because you get these agents like, and I guess I can understand it. You know, if I was closing multi-million-dollar deals, I probably would be a grade A, like a-hole too, you know, but these smaller markets, like the main thing that I uncovered for Georgia is they got together and said, we want to make sure that all the work comes to us because we were here first and we don't want LA coming in and swooping up stuff. And so I found out about that. And so then that kind of hindered me. So then when I approached them, I always had to approach them with all my Georgia information. So that way they thought I was there.
Like your
office, resident? My email, everything. Like, I had to swap out everything. Like, even when I mailed these cats cards, I did the return address as my Georgia office. So a lot of them don't even know. Some know I'm in LA. Like, even when I met with the New York ones, they were like, oh, we thought you were in Georgia. That was the only reason why they met with me. So I just kind of learned how to play the game. Like, you know, you learn how to play the game. The challenges are, it's just the different time zones, obviously, you know, 3 hours ahead versus, you know, where I'm at now. But the work is the same. You know, you're trying to get them acting opportunities. With literary, pretty much everything's in LA anyway, and my writers live in LA, so they can go in person and take meetings. And, you know, we have everything electronically that we can submit to the different executives. So I think the most challenging thing is just the different personalities. Everybody's different. I have some people that are, you know, aggressive, business-minded, and they handle what needs to be done. And I have others that are timid and scared that, you know, need a little pep talk. You know, and then you have some that are in between, and then we all have our ups and downs. So
feel like your clients appreciate the work you're doing?
Sometimes. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Like, even right now, looking at who's being extremely productive during the quarantine versus who I haven't even heard from. Like, we received a private audition from a casting director that didn't hit the breakdown sites, and I submitted some folks, and he chose 3 people. And one of them still today has not turned in their audition, to where I had to email her and be like, hey, are you healthy? You know, that was my first question of like, are you healthy? Because we had this private audition for you to be a lead in this feature film, and you never turned in a tape. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with. And this is a time where it's like, money is tight. You better take whatever bookings you can get right now. So I think that some really understand what I do. The ones who really understand are my interns. They'll be like, oh my gosh. But most don't. Because they're so used to being treated terribly at the other places they've been to. Like, most agents don't even respond to their clients when the clients start asking all these questions. And they ask questions they really don't need to be asking. And so they just get ignored. And even one of my clients mentioned that. He said, my roommate's been trying to get a meeting with his agent for like 3 months. They haven't even responded to him. And he's like, and I can sit up here and message Tiauna and get a response in like 5 minutes. So that's why I just talk about the difference in quality of service. Like, I'm here to, assist them as best as I can. But, ultimately, if I don't have talent, I have no agency. So if you don't figure out how to use your resources to your advantage, you're not going to go anywhere. And so that's kind of where we're at, is I'm focusing on trying to get these guys to really rise to a challenge, rise above, so we can break out and make it. Because that's all it takes is one breakout. That's what happened with Green and Associates with Tessa. Tessa broke out doing that Mississippi Damned, and then Chadwick broke out doing all those movies, and now that agency is a major contender, but it wasn't.
So for anybody, like, I think that's very important to know, for anybody, whether it be, some of these bigger agencies that doubt or have apprehensions about your ability, what should they know about you? Like, what are they missing fundamentally about you and people like you?
I think you won't find anybody more well-rounded. I know a little bit about everything, and that's been helpful. I can literally tell a client, like, no, you need to retape because your white balance was off. Like, you're not in color. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You're orange. That kind of thing. I've told them what kind of equipment they can buy to do their self-tape setup properly. Talk to them about video compression. So, advise them about headshots and showing them what works and what doesn't work. Telling them and showing them about the different characters that we encounter regularly, so that way they're getting the right headshots. Teaching them how to properly format their resume and not put background on there, so that they're just, it's a kiss of death really on a resume, is putting background on it. Being able to tell these guys, hey man, you might want to save your money because we're all going to be homeless soon. Like, just random stuff like that. A lot of these cats, didn't get that kind of information from their agents, but ultimately my work ethic is unmatched, like, period. At the end of the day, I'm up. Like, yesterday I had to do an interview that was at 8 Central, which means I had been up yesterday since 1 a.m. So I was up at 1, got dressed by 4, was out the house, was here at 5, and waiting until we went on air at 6 a.m. I don't even think the people that I, interviewed with knew that. I don't think they thought about the time zone. And I didn't even proffer any excuses of like, well, hey, can we do this at 10, Pacific? Like, this is early for me. I didn't. I just sucked it up and did what needed to be done. And that happens a lot. I lived outside of LA my last year in LA, and I traveled about a 2-hour drive into my office. So I would leave my house at like 3:30 in the morning and come in with the rest of the rush hour traffic from the Inland Empire and go to my office and have meetings all day from 7 a.m. to about 6 p.m. I offered no complaints. If anything, I even bragged about it on social media, and I said, how bad do you want it? Because here's what I'm out here doing. So, that's where it's at, basically. I can't tell you why you should work with me, other than if you want someone Black who's honest, who doesn't rip you off and is going to work hard for you, I'm your girl.
It sounds like it's not just a pitch to, up and coming Black talent. It's just for anybody who wants a high level of service and commitment and, just knowledge to help advance their career or advance the opportunities to take their career to different heights.
One of my clients, she's with me across the board now, but she was with me theatrical only at the time, and her commercial agent wasn't getting her opportunities. So we got her opportunities. So it pretty much just proved, okay, we're trying to get you opportunities. They're not. People don't understand a lot of these agents will just sign you and shelve you, and just have you. Because casting directors can do a search in a global database and find what they want. There are times we get auditions where they may not even have released the project, or they just went and looked for exactly what they wanted, and they can do what's called a direct select. And so some of these agencies will do that. And that's why you don't hear from them, because they're not doing anything anyway. And I can understand it. For 10%, how hard do you want to work for 10% when that's $50 if the kid books the commercial? But you might have worked, all month long, what I'm saying, for that $50. Like, I think at one point in time, I calculated what like my hourly wage would have been. And I think it was like 3 cents an hour or something like that by the time I was done with just like a $100 commission. I was like, wow, this is sad. This is the life of a boutique. That's the truth. The others won't tell you that. They'll just sit there, oh yeah, we're out here doing this, that, and the other. But they're lying. We're not all making money. There's too many of us to be making money. There's over 1,500 licensed agencies in the state of California.
Well, for me, that's part of the appeal. Like you're not, it's not, you're not about horse shit.
I literally can't.
I mean, some people look for that. They want to be told that they're great and they want to be They want their egos stroked, and they just want to live in some other reality. But I mean, maybe there's people that obviously want that. I appreciate people whom are going to be candid and honest and play the game relatively clean as compared to some other people. Thanks, truck driver. There's construction over here. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, hats off to you, man. Like, it doesn't sound easy at all. Like,
It is not.
Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah. So, we're moving in a space now, especially post corona, that it is important now more than ever to get connected with other like minded Blacks and African Americans. And so my appeal now is that for anyone who, has the same point of view as I do, please reach out and get a hold of me, because I'm aligning myself with some folks and we're really starting to work together to pool our Black dollars and generate Black wealth. But I'm astute enough to know that not every Black person can be included in that, because you have people who deliberately exist to destroy things from the inside out. And there are a lot of Black folks who don't even have the same perspective as I do. Like, I've been talking about we needed a civil war since like 2003. So, I'm on some other shit. But there are some folks who are out here who understand the power of the Black dollar, understand that we are being discriminated against, and understand that there is strength in numbers. And so I appeal to those like-minded individuals to please get in touch with me. So especially business owners, so that we can start to pool our resources and our knowledge and really get some things going. I guess I can call it the virtual Black Wall Street.
I like that. I think you can also offer some value in reminding Black people how they should treat each other. Like, I've known some young people, and without going into too much detail, whom would just get treated like shit by people who've quote unquote made it. They'll fire them via an email or secondhand, or just really talk down to them. And it's like, come on, man, you've probably been along that same path. Why would you turn around and treat a younger Black person in that way when you know how hard it is for us? Share something to remind people how we should treat each other, Tiauna, please.
We're supposed to treat each other with kindness and respect, but I think it also depends on what city you live in as to how well that goes. Because it was funny, I was just thinking about, I think a meme popped up about driving in Los Angeles, and it was like using sign language in Los Angeles. I was like, oh, I know exactly what that is. I think that, we have to understand that everybody has bills to pay. And I think when you get to that commonality, we can calm down with, trying to one-up one another. You know what I'm saying? Trying to outmaneuver one another. If we can stop being deceitful and shady and all those things and just being honest and saying, look, here's what I do. What do you do? And I feel like New Yorkers have that. Like, you can go to New York and meet anybody and they'd be like, yo, what do you do? Okay, well, I got a friend who does that. Like, what's your number? I'll connect you to. I feel like they're really good at understanding the power of a network. And so I think that the way we need to treat each other as Black folks moving forward, probably number one would be education, because we do have a lot of Black folks who live in the South who still don't even understand that they're still on the plantation. Secondly, we as a group need to put more pressure, since P. Diddy and T.I. and Killer Mike want to put themselves out there as these revolutionaries. Why is Flint still fucked up? Like, why is Flint still fucked up? And there were points in time, like, when you were like, yo, what are you going to do? I thought about closing the agency and just taking my ass to Michigan and being like, fuck it, I'll dig the trench myself. Like, and I'll just do it myself because I have the means to do so. But I just feel like, if we're going to have these Black voices who want to speak up and, speak about our existence in our community, you're going to need to be like pristine clean. No multiple baby mamas, you know what I'm saying? Have a good education, be clean cut. Don't be a rapper because, that's the funny thing is, like, people forget rappers always talk about, oh, well, I sold drugs to get where I need to be, but now my kids, flying on a private jet and in a boarding school, right? They preach about this lifestyle that really doesn't exist anymore. You know what I'm saying? It may have existed for them as a kid, but obviously it's been hyper sensationalized. So I just feel like whoever it is that really can actually benefit this community and not have their hand out at the same time getting it, because let's face it, a lot of these cats get paid to do these things. We found that out during the MLK era, that, you know, the government was paying them to pacify us. That's the leader that we need. I would volunteer myself, but I talk too much shit. Like, I really, y'all don't want to hear from me, okay? Because I'll tell you the truth. Like, yeah, we fucking up, okay? And here's what we need to do. But that's kind of what I'm looking for. Like, I remember when I was a kid, my dad was really hoping that Jesse Jackson would be president. I remember that as a kid. That's like one of my earliest memories of like politics, was like that night my dad was just like, please, 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 I hope so. And he was my first phone call when President Obama was elected. And he was like, congratulations, little girl. Like, I never thought I would be alive to see this. Okay. My dad was born in 1940. So I just feel like we're really lacking in a voice that really does understand how to move within all of the different facets of the Black community. And that's what we need. But logically, we're not going to find that. So the communities are going to have to just go ahead and find somebody that they can work with and start building from there. We can't fix a lot of this. People don't even know that Vicksburg, Mississippi has been flooded for at least 9 months now.
Mm.
So there's so many things that are happening that nobody knows about.
Mm.
But we have Black news channels that don't cover these things, right? I'm a Black-owned talent agent. There's only a handful of us. I'm not in any Black newspapers. I had to literally pitch myself to my local newspaper here in Phoenix, and they won't even put me on digitally. They only put me in print circulation. So it's gone.
Mm.
We've got a problem. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just looking to align myself with folks who really want to actually be a solution.
I don't know how I could help you, but if anything comes to you, ask. I'll do my no. And I don't tell everybody that. I don't know what I could do if it means you coming back and or meeting up or whatever when the virus is over. Like, I'm open to helping however I can. So
this was wild, right? Went from talking about being a Black agent to about, you know, rebuilding the Black community from within and telling everybody they ain't shit. Love it.
well, I mean, it's a lot of it's all connected, man.
Yeah, especially on the consumer level, because that's ultimately what it is the dollar. The dollar ties us all together.
So do you have any social media or websites you want to call out?
Yeah, I am at Tiauna J on Instagram. My website is thejacksonagency.com, and my Twitter is at TJ Agency.
Okay, I'll be sure to put graphics up of those for the YouTube clip. And you are going to have some TikTok clips also. You're going to be the first person I put on TikTok. How do you feel about that?
I stay in trouble. I'm used to it now. That's probably also why we're not making it. I talk too much. Oh, well.
Well,
I'm just over it. Like, once I got to that point where they admitted that they were discriminating and we're like, yeah, no, we have a filter. I was just like, okay, it's a wrap. Like, all those hopes and dreams I had of fairness and equality just went right out the window.
I don't know if I would encourage you not to be who you are.
I don't know, man. Look, I don't know if I ever told you this story, so I guess this is a good outro. I had a meeting over the phone with the creative and inclusion executive at a cable network. I would damn near want to out them, but I feel like we're going to get a show on there, so I'm not going to say who it is. She was a sister. She is a sister. And she spent the entire meeting chastising me and questioning my qualifications. Questioning as to, for instance, I gave her an example of there's about 20 agencies that you guys work with. And, for diversity and inclusion purposes, I feel like you guys need to broaden that scope because I am a Black-owned agency. And I have talented writers who I could be staffing on your shows and talented actors that could be appearing in your shows. And she said, well, if we're working with 20 agencies, why should you be number 21? Who do you have? And so I rattled off my 6 top people who some were series regulars. One is an up and coming pop star who has literally worked with everyone. They request her to be in their videos. And she told me, oh, well, that's nice of them to stay with you when you're so small. Most would have gone on to a bigger agency.
What is that all about?
That's her job. And so that's what I'm learning is that a lot of these studios have these Clarence Thomases in these diversity and inclusion positions to continue to, prevent diversity and inclusion.
I could talk a little more shit about this than you can. So what is her purpose?
To collect a check. Like, that's her purpose.
There's more to it than that. It sounds like one of these people who has made it, and they are in this position where they can talk down to other Black people when it's like, well, maybe you were just very fortunate or lucky to get to where you were. But secondly, it's like, what is she doing that to then go and tell a story to her colleagues? Like, yeah, she's like, I don't automatically defer to other Black people. And like, I told her, like, what is the purpose? Like, what does she get out of treating you like that? I don't fucking get it. Like, it's some sadistic bullshit.
She felt really good about herself that day. Like I just said, one day we're going to have a script in there and we're going to lock in a deal. And when we do that, I'm going to request that she's at the meeting. It's just like I talked to another manager who the same thing happened to him at a network. And the executive there was a Black woman, and they wouldn't push through this, their client's completed documentary. And so they kept trying, they wouldn't push it through. And so they had no choice but to go partner with an outside distribution company. That distribution company ended up getting it in at that network anyway. And so when it was done, the creator of that project wanted to take that executive out because they still wanted to build that relationship. They didn't want to have to go sacrifice, more points off of, their earnings to go keep going through this third party distributor, right, to get in. And so they said, well, hey, I'm going to be in town. Why don't we have drinks? Why don't we have dinner? And that executive said, no, you're just trying to have dinner with me to throw it in my face. And she said, no, I'm trying to have dinner with you because I have other projects and I want to do business with you.
What is wrong with people, man? People just lost their fucking minds. They're going crazy. Like, I can't imagine a scenario where I would talk to somebody like that and not be joking. Like, I talk shit with my friends and we joke around, but it's like we're doing it because we're having fun with each other. It's like we wouldn't talk to each other like that seriously, let alone professionally. Yeah. This town has lost its fucking mind, or did it even have it to begin with? Shit.
But I feel like, in that woman's response, she told on herself. You know what I'm saying? I think she knows she deliberately blocked that project. And then by seeing them be able to get that project through and get it cleared and get paid for it, now she's kind of in a messed up situation, because if they had been me, those emails would have come to light. You know what I'm saying? If it had been me, I'd be like, look, we tried to give this thing to you 6 months ago, but this person said no. So they really could have, that's an EO anyway. That's an EO complaint / whatever. But they're nicer than me. Because I'd be like, you don't need this job. You're not being effective, like, period. Your job is to bring in content, and you failed. You failed so miserably that we had to go somewhere else and bring it in under another person. So if the end result was your network was going to buy it anyway, yeah, we're going to show negligence on the part of you, and you can go ahead and cut us another check. See, that's me. That's why I can't go back to law school. See, I get in trouble. Because I wanted to talk about vicarious liability today because folks don't understand it, but I think I'll probably just write a blog about it later.
Vicarious liability, what is that?
Yeah, it's a thing under like negligence. It's a tort. It's a civil lawsuit situation where this is why people don't understand why Hollywood specifically, and really your jobs, are struggling with letting you back in. Because one could use vicarious liability to say, well, say for instance, say we found out patient 0 was a FedEx worker. And FedEx had this actually Amazon would probably be the better model because Amazon ain't letting nobody off work. So Amazon knew their people were sick, but they still sent them out delivering packages. And say someone ended up spreading this virus to other places. And if you could trace it back to Amazon as like patient 0, Amazon is vicariously liable because they're the employer and they are responsible for that employee while that employee is on the clock. So it's no different than like, if you get into an accident where a truck has hit you while it's on the clock, you can go after that company rather than the driver because the driver's on the employee. And so the problem you're having is that Hollywood had a lot of lawsuits. As soon as the government started to do the quarantine and force production to shut down, there were folks who went and filed what I consider to be frivolous lawsuits saying, you have no right to stop me from producing my movie. But what they did is they know that it's going to be an automatic settlement check. They're just going to get some money. Just like how LA just throws money at the family after they shoot and kill your child, right? Here you go. Here's some money. Go away. Okay, I feel better now, right? So it was going to be that type of situation. And so with this, because they can't really figure out, one, they don't even really know how this thing spreads. We went from it's airborne and water droplets to, oh, well, you can't catch it in the air. But I'm like, well, but it's airborne and water droplets. Like, how can you not? To now we've got plexiglass that's supposed to apparently stop the airborne transmission of this virus, right? You go into the grocery store, please stay behind the plexiglass. I'm like, that's not how this works. But you have folks that may be asymptomatic carriers. We're talking about the second wave. And so they can go on set and be negative, and then 2 weeks later, your set has a whole bunch of corona. So I grew up watching Unsolved Mysteries in like 2020. You know what I'm saying? Like in America's Most Wanted. Like when people, somebody did a meme about that once. They were like, how come, 80s babies are this way? And I'm like, because we grew up watching like murder after like, what was that show with the Steve Urkel? Family Matters? Like after Family Matters went off, like the most awful things were on TV on Friday nights.
Oh boy.
Got nothing on me. I'm tough.
All right. Well, hey, keep staying safe. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.